My mother's text said, "Don't come to Thanksgiving. You'll ruin it for everyone." So I smiled, opened my banking app, and canceled the mortgage payment I'd been making on her house for the past 5 years. The mortgage she didn't even know I was paying. She called me screaming 3 weeks later. I sent her a screenshot that made her world collapse. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Elena Michaels, 36 years old, and on a crisp November morning, my own mother told me not to come to the family Thanksgiving dinner, the same dinner happening in the house I was secretly paying for. Before I tell you about the screenshot, that changed everything. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It amazes me how these stories connect us across distances. Picture this. I'm standing in my sun-filled apartment in Portland, steaming mug of coffee warming my hands, rain tapping gently against the windows, the kind of peaceful Saturday morning that feels like a gift. My phone buzzes. A text from my mother, Marion. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, which wasn't unusual. Our relationship had always been complicated, but I still held on to this foolish hope that someday, somehow, things would change. I opened the message, that familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Thanksgiving dinner is at 4 p.m. this year. Don't come. Your brother's bringing his new girlfriend, and I don't want any of your drama ruining it for everyone. I'll send you a plate with your sister if you want. The words hit like a physical blow. Don't come. You'll ruin it. Like I'm some toxic substance that contaminates everything I touch. It's like I'm the family problem that needs to be managed, contained, kept at a safe distance. I take a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the old familiar pain wash over me. But this time, something different happens. The pain transforms, crystallizes into something harder. Clearer, resolve. Because here's the thing my mother doesn't know. For the past 5 years, ever since my father passed away and left her with mounting debts and a mortgage she couldn't afford, I've been quietly, anonymously paying that mortgage. Every month, $2,300 transferred from my account to Westlake Mortgage Company, not because she deserved it, not because she'd ever shown me the love I desperately craved, because, despite everything, I couldn't bear the thought of her losing her home, the same home I was now being told not to enter, the same home where the family would gather without me, grateful for a roof that existed because of my sacrifice. I stare at the phone, something shifting inside me. A lifetime of trying to earn love that was never freely given. A lifetime of being the family scapegoat, the designated problem, the emotional punching bag. And for what? For this text on a rainy Saturday morning, I open my banking app, navigate to scheduled payments, find the recurring mortgage payment. My finger hovers over the cancel button for just a moment where my entire history flashes before my eyes. Then I press down. Confirm. Done. 5 years of financial sacrifice wiped away in 5 seconds. I feel lighter, as if I've set down a burden I've been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't actually a part of me. I don't respond to her text. I don't call to argue or explain or defend myself, as I've done so many times before. Instead, I put down my phone, pick up my coffee, and look out at the rain-washed city below. For the first time in forever, I feel free. 3 weeks later, 2 days before Thanksgiving, my phone explodes with notifications. 6 missed calls from my mother. 3 from my brother, Chase. A flurry of texts, each more frantic than the last. Call me now. What have you done? The bank says we're 3 months behind on the mortgage. They're threatening foreclosure. The final text from my mother reads simply, "How could you do this to your family?" I almost laugh. At the irony, family, as if I'd ever truly been counted among their number. They don't call back. Instead, I take a screenshot of my banking history, 60 consecutive mortgage payments, dating back 5 years. Every payment labeled Mom's mortgage. Send it to her with a simple message. How could you do this to your daughter? Then I block her number and my brother's too. I've spent my whole life being accessible to their criticism, their demands, their manipulation. No more. You're probably wondering how things got to this point. How a daughter ends up secretly paying her mother's mortgage only to cancel it after one thoughtless text. To understand that, we need to go back. Way back. I was always the odd one out in the Michaels family. From my earliest memories, I felt like I was watching my family through a pane of glass. I could see them, couldn't quite touch them, couldn't quite belong. My brother Chase was the golden child, athletic, charming, with our father's easy confidence and our mother's striking blue eyes. My sister Lily was the baby, coddled and protected, allowed to drift through life without expectations or pressure. And then there was me, the middle child, too loud, too sensitive, too much of everything my mother found distasteful. "Elena, must you always make such a scene?" was her constant refrain. Even when I was just expressing normal childhood enthusiasm, "Elena, why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my youth. My earliest memory of realizing my place in the family hierarchy came when I was 7 years old. I'd spent weeks preparing a dance routine for the family talent show my father had to organize for Christmas Eve. I practiced every day after school, choreographing moves to my favorite song, making a costume from an old tutu and some craft supplies. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. When the big night came, I was vibrating with excitement. Chase went first, showing off some soccer tricks in the living room that had everyone cheering. Lily, only 5 at the time, sang a slightly off-key rendition of Jingle Bells that was met with adoring applause and photographs. Then it was my turn. I stood in the center of the living room, my heart pounding with anticipation. The music started and I began to dance, putting my whole 7-year-old heart into every move. Halfway through my routine, I noticed my mother wasn't watching. She was in the kitchen, starting to clean up dinner dishes, her back to me. My father was checking his watch. Chase was playing with the new Game Boy he'd opened earlier. Only Lily was watching, her eyes wide with the uncritical admiration of a younger sibling. I faltered, missed a step, then another. When the music ended, my father gave a distracted "good job, kiddo," while my mother called from the kitchen, "Elena, come help me with these dishes before the food dries on them." No applause, no photos, just dishes that apparently couldn't wait 3 more minutes. Later that night, I heard my mother talking to my aunt on the phone. "Elena's always demanding attention," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the heating vent to my bedroom above. "It's exhausting. Chase and Lily are so much easier." I curled into myself under the covers, trying to understand what was wrong with me, why I was so hard to love. This pattern continued throughout my childhood. Chase's soccer games were family events. My parents never missed one, cheering loudly from the sidelines, taking him for ice cream afterward, win or lose. My academic achievements, straight A's, the spelling bee championship, first place in the science fair, were met with quick nods and immediate "don't get too full of yourself" warnings. Our house in suburban Minneapolis was comfortable, even beautiful, a 2-story colonial with a manicured lawn and flower beds. My mother tended with more care than she ever showed me. But it never felt like home, not really. Home is where you belong, and I never belonged there. High school brought its own special brand of hell. While Chase became the quarterback and prom king, I retreated into books and art, finding solace in worlds I created on paper when the real world proved too painful. My mother saw my introspection as another failing. "Why can't you make an effort to be more social, Elena? You'll never find a boyfriend if you keep hiding away like this." As if a boyfriend was the solution to everything. As if my worth could only be validated by someone else's desire. The one bright spot was Ms. Caldwell, my high school art teacher. She was the first adult who seemed to see something valuable in me, who treated my sensitivity as a strength rather than a weakness. "You have a unique perspective, Elena," she told me one afternoon, as I stayed late to work on a painting. "See things others miss. That's a gift, not a burden." Those words were a lifeline I clung to when my mother's criticism threatened to drown me. The gulf between my mother and me widened when I announced I wanted to study art in college. Tay was horrified. "Art? What kind of career is that? You'll be living in a cardboard box." No amount of research about career options in graphic design or digital art could convince her. She wanted me to study nursing, practical, lucrative, respectable. The fact that I fainted at the sight of blood was apparently irrelevant. Father, as usual, stayed out of it. He was a peripheral figure in these family dynamics, present physically but absent emotionally, retreating to his workshop in the garage whenever conflict arose. The argument about college escalated until my mother delivered her ultimatum. If you insist on wasting your education on art, don't expect us to pay for it. Chase's education at an expensive private university had been fully funded, no questions asked. But for me, support came with conditions I couldn't accept. So I left. With scholarships, student loans, and a determination born of desperation, I enrolled at the Pacific Northwest College of Art in Portland, as far from Minneapolis as I could reasonably get while staying in the continental United States. Those early years were brutally hard. I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs while carrying a full course load. I lived on ramen and free gallery, opening appetizers. I slept on a futon in an apartment shared with 3 other students, all of us barely scraping by. But for the first time, I was surrounded by people who understood me, people who didn't see my sensitivity as a character flaw, but as an essential quality for an artist. People who celebrated rather than stifled my passions. I began to bloom, my artwork gaining recognition, my confidence growing with each small success. I discovered I had a particular talent for digital illustration and user interface design, the perfect intersection of art and technology that would later become my career. Contact with my family dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and the occasional strained visit. My mother's disappointment remained palpable even across 1,500 miles. My achievements in the art world gallery, showings, design awards, positive reviews were dismissed as nice hobbies rather than the professional accomplishments they were. During my senior year of college, I met Jack Sullivan, a software developer with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that drew me in like a magnet. He was the first person who loved me without reservation, who didn't see me as too much or not enough, but as exactly right. "You know what I love about you, Elena?" he said one night as we lay looking at the stars from the roof of his apartment. "Building, you feel everything so deeply. You see beauty where others see nothing special. It's like you've got this whole extra dimension to your experience of the world." The words my mother had always meant as criticism. Too sensitive, too emotional, Jack saw as my greatest strengths. We were together for 3 years, building a life that felt solid and true. Jack encouraged my art, celebrated my successes, held me through my failures. With him, I began to heal, to believe that perhaps I was worthy of love after all. And then, in our final semester, just months before graduation, Jack was killed by a drunk driver while cycling home from the studio, where he'd been working late on a project. One moment he was there, my future bright and certain. The next, he was gone, and I was adrift again. I called my mother, sobbing, barely able to form words through my grief. "Mom, Jack's dead. There was an accident. He's gone." There was a pause, and then, "Oh, Elena, I knew this would happen, so I didn't want you moving so far away. Who's going to help you now? You need to come home. Not, I'm so sorry. Not I love you. Not I'll be on the next plane. Just I told you so, and a demand that I return to the place that had never truly been home." I hung up and called my best friend instead. Sophie arrived at my apartment 20 minutes later with tissues, chocolate, and a shoulder to cry on. She helped me plan the memorial service. She slept on my couch for 2 weeks to make sure I ate and showered. She showed me what family is. Supposed to be, I didn't go home. I finished my degree, throwing myself into my work as a way to process my grief. I created a series of digital artworks called Absence that explored the negative space left when someone you love disappears. The series went viral in the design community and led to my first major job offer, a position at Horizon Interactive, one of the top digital design firms in Portland. My starting salary was more than my mother made after 20 years as an administrative assistant, but I never told her that. Some part of me was still the little girl desperately seeking approval, and I couldn't bear another dismissal of my choices. Life moved forward. I built a career. I made friends who became the family I chose. I dated occasionally, though no one ever quite measured up to Jack. I was, if not completely healed, at least functional. Content, even in the life I'd created. For myself, then, 5 years ago, the call came that changed everything. My father had died suddenly, a massive heart attack while working in his beloved garage. Despite our distant relationship, the loss hit me hard. He might not have been an active protector, but he'd been a buffer of sorts, his quiet presence tempering my mother's sharper edges. I flew home for the funeral, my first visit in nearly 2 years. The house looked smaller than I remembered, shabbier, the paint peeling in places. The garden beds my mother had once tended so meticulously now overgrown with weeds. Chase was there with his wife, playing the role of the grieving son to perfection, accepting condolences with just the right mixture of sadness and strength. Lily fluttered about, emotional and helpless as always, needing constant reassurance and support. And my mother? She seemed diminished somehow.
How?
Her usually perfect appearance showing cracks, a missed button on her blouse, hair not quite styled, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. After the funeral, as distant, relatives and neighborhood friends filtered out of the house. I found myself alone with her in the kitchen. She was washing dishes with mechanical precision, her back rigid, her movements sharp. "Mom," I said softly, "I'm so sorry about Dad." She didn't turn around, just kept scrubbing a casserole dish with unnecessary force. He left us with nothing, you know. Nothing but debts and a mortgage we can't afford. No acknowledgement of my condolences. No shared moment of grief. Just straight to the practical problems, the financial burden, the inconvenience of it all. "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning against the counter. She finally turned to face me, her expression a mixture of anger and fear. "Your father remortgaged the house 3 years ago to invest in some harebrained business scheme with his brother. Lost everything, of course. And now I'm left with a mortgage payment I can barely cover on my salary and credit card debt I didn't even know about until the funeral director handed me the bill and your father's card was declined." I was stunned. My father had always been conservative with money, cautious to a fault. This risk-taking behavior seemed completely out of character. "Did Chase or Lily know about this?" I asked. My mother scoffed. "Chase has his own family to worry about. And Lily, please. She can barely take care of herself, let alone help anyone else." The implication was clear. I was being assigned responsibility by default, not because I was valued or trusted, but because the preferred options weren't viable. "What are you going to do?" I asked carefully. "What can I do?" "Keep working until I drop dead, I suppose. Lose the house eventually. Move into some depressing little apartment." Her voice cracked slightly, the first hint of vulnerability I'd seen. "This is my home, Elena. 40 years in this house. All my memories are here." Something shifted in me then. Despite everything, the criticism, the dismissal, the constant feeling of not being enough, this was my mother, and she was afraid. I thought about my job at Horizon, which had recently promoted me to creative director. My salary had doubled. I had savings, investments, a comfortable cushion. I could help. "How much is the mortgage payment?" I asked. She named a figure that made me wince, but was within my means. Then, as if realizing what I was considering, she straightened her spine and the familiar cool mask slipped back into place. "I'm not asking for your charity, Elena. I'm simply stating facts." Of course she wasn't asking. That would require acknowledging she needed something from me, which would shift the power dynamic in a way she couldn't tolerate. I nodded slowly. "I understand. I was just curious." That night in my old bedroom that had long since been converted to a sewing room, I made a decision. I would help, but on my terms. I would pay the mortgage, but anonymously. No strings attached, no leverage for my mother to manipulate, no opportunity for her to diminish the significance of my assistance. The next day, before flying back to Portland, I visited the local branch of Westlake Mortgage Company. I explained that I wanted to make payments on my mother's account, but didn't want her to know. The loan officer looked skeptical until I mentioned my father's recent passing and my desire to help without wounding my mother's pride. "I can set it up as a recurring payment from your account," he said finally. She'll see that the payment is being made, but not where it's coming from. As long as you're not asking for any information about the account, we can do this. So began my secret support. Every month for 5 years, $2,300 transferred from my account to Westlake Mortgage. I never mentioned it to my mother, and she never thanked me for the mysterious payments that kept her in her home. I assumed she thought my father had set up some kind of insurance or payment plan before his death. Meanwhile, our relationship continued its familiar pattern. Occasional phone calls filled with her complaints and thinly veiled criticisms. Holiday visits that left me emotionally drained. Her consistent messaging that I was somehow deficient, too artistic, too sensitive, too independent, too much myself and not enough like her. I endured it all with a private satisfaction, knowing I was helping despite her inability to appreciate me. It was a strange sort of power, this secret generosity. A way of proving my worth to myself, if not to her. Until that text on a rainy Saturday morning changed everything. Don't come. You'll ruin it for everyone. 6 words that cut through 5 years of silent sacrifice, that stripped away any illusion that things could ever be different between us. 6 words that finally made me understand. No amount of money, no level of success, no degree of self-abnegation would ever be enough to earn her unconditional love, because the problem had never been me. It had been her all along, her inability to accept difference, her rigid expectations, her need to control rather than connect. And now, as I sit in my Portland apartment, watching my phone light up with increasingly desperate messages from the family that never truly embraced me, I feel a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness for what could have been, anger at what was, and underneath it all, a profound sense of relief, because I'm finally done trying. Done paying, literally and figuratively, for approval that never comes. Done accepting scraps of attention when I deserve a feast of love. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and for the first time, I'm truly thankful for my life exactly as it is. For the chosen family that surrounds me with genuine affection, for the career that values my unique perspective, for the strength I've found to finally put myself first. I close my eyes and imagine my mother's face when she saw that. Screenshot 60 mortgage payments she never knew about, 60 months of support she never acknowledged. I imagine her understanding, perhaps for the first time, exactly what she's lost. Not just the financial support, but the daughter who, despite everything, still wanted to help. The daughter who, even after years of emotional neglect, still tried to protect her. The daughter who is now finally walking away. My phone buzzes again. It's a text from Sophie. Friendsgiving at my place tomorrow, at 3 p.m. Bring that cranberry thing you make and your wonderful self. Love you. I smile and type. Back. Wouldn't miss it for the world, and I mean it. I wouldn't miss it for the world. To understand how I reached this breaking point, canceling a mortgage payment I'd quietly made for 5 years, you need to know the story of how I became invisible in my own family. Not just overlooked, but actively erased, as if my very existence was an inconvenience to be managed, rather than a life to be cherished. My childhood home in Maple Grove, a pristine suburb of Minneapolis, was a showcase of perfection. From the outside, the Michaels family had it all. A handsome father who coached Little League, mother who chaired the PTA, and 3 healthy children spaced almost perfectly 2 years apart. Our Christmas cards could have been stock photos, all matching sweaters and practiced smiles. But inside those freshly painted walls, a different reality existed. A reality where my brother Chase collected trophies that lined the mantelpiece while my academic certificates were tucked away in drawers. A reality where my sister Lily's smallest accomplishments warranted celebration dinners, while my larger ones warranted reminders not to show off. A reality where I learned, meal by meal, conversation by conversation, birthday by forgotten birthday, that my presence was tolerated rather than treasured. The kitchen table was where I first understood my place in the family hierarchy. It was a large oak table with 6 chairs, though we were only 5. My father Gerald sat at the head, commanding and distant. My mother Marion sat opposite him, alert to his every need, jumping up to refill his water glass before it was empty. Chase sat at my father's right hand, the position of honor, the heir apparent. Lily, the baby, sat beside my mother, within reach of her nurturing attention, and me. I sat on the least desirable side, my back to the kitchen entrance, the draft from the air conditioning vent chilling my neck in summer. My plate often the last to be served, my stories the first to be interrupted. "Elena, please let your brother finish," was my mother's constant refrain. Even when Chase had been talking for 10 straight minutes about his soccer game, while my news about winning the school poetry contest remained unshared. One evening, when I was 12, I decided to conduct an experiment. During dinner, I remained completely silent. I didn't ask for seconds. I didn't try to join the conversation. Simply ate quietly, watching, waiting to see how long it would take for someone to notice my silence, to ask what was wrong or if I had something to share. The entire meal passed without a single question directed my way. Not one, "How was your day, Elena?" Not one, "You're quiet tonight, everything okay?" It was as if my silence was preferable, a relief rather than a concern. As I helped clear the dishes, a chore mysteriously assigned primarily to me, while Chase had homework and Lily was too little, my mother finally spoke to me. "You were well behaved at dinner tonight, Elena. It was nice not to have you." Interrupting everyone for once, the words hit like a slap. My silence hadn't been noticed as an absence. It had been appreciated as an improvement. The message was clear. I was better when I took up less space. I carried that lesson with me, shrinking myself bit by bit, trying to become the daughter they seemed to want, quiet, undemanding, invisible. But even as I dimmed my light, it never seemed to be enough. My mother's criticism was constant, a background radiation that permeated every interaction. My hair was never quite right, too frizzy, too wild, unlike Lily's smooth golden locks. My laugh was too loud, my voice too assertive. My interests were too unusual, my opinions too strong. "Must you always be so dramatic, Elena?" she would sigh when I expressed enthusiasm about a book or movie. No one wants to hear all that. But the most painful criticism targeted not what I did, but who I was at my core. My sensitivity, my ability to feel deeply, to empathize completely, to be moved by beauty and wounded by cruelty, was treated as a character flaw rather than a gift. "You need to toughen up," my mother would say whenever I cried at a sad movie or mourned a dead bird in our backyard. "The world will eat you alive if you keep wearing your heart on your sleeve like that." I tried. God, how I tried to be tougher, to care less, to let hurtful words bounce off me. But it was like trying not to breathe. My sensitivity wasn't a choice. It was an intrinsic part of me, as fundamental as my brown eyes or my right-handedness. My father, when he was present at all, was a ghost drifting through our lives, worked long hours as an insurance executive, and when home, retreated to his garage workshop where he built intricate model ships and bottles, delicate painstaking, work that required a gentleness I never saw him display toward his family. On rare occasions, when my mother was out, a different father emerged. He would make pancakes on Saturday mornings, shaped like dinosaurs or stars. He would ask about my art projects with genuine interest. Once he took me to an art museum in downtown Minneapolis, just the two of us, and stood patiently beside me. As I stared transfixed at a Van Gogh, understanding something I couldn't yet articulate about the beauty of visible brushstrokes, of not hiding the mess behind the creation. "You see things differently, Ellie," he said quietly, using the nickname that only appeared when my mother wasn't around. "That's special." But these moments were fleeting, evaporating like morning mist when my mother returned. In her presence, he reverted to the distant authority figure, backing her parenting decisions even when his furrowed brow suggested disagreement. School became my sanctuary, a place where achievement was rewarded rather than dismissed. I collected perfect grades, like talismans, concrete proof of my worth that couldn't be denied. I joined every club that would have me: debate team, literary magazine, art club, staying after school for hours to avoid going home to a house where my absence was preferable to my presence. It was in the art room after hours that I met Mrs. Abernathy, the first adult who truly saw me. She was in her 60s, with wild gray hair and paint-splattered overalls, completely unconcerned with the suburban propriety that governed my mother's existence. "You've got something special, Elena," she told me one afternoon as I worked on a watercolor landscape. "You paint what you feel, not just what you see. That's rare." Under her guidance, I flourished. My paintings began winning regional competitions. A piece I created about isolation, a solitary figure surrounded by empty chairs, was displayed at the Minneapolis Institute of Art's Young Artists exhibition. When the notification came about the exhibition, I was ecstatic. This was it. The achievement so significant, so public, that even my family couldn't diminish it. I imagined my mother's face when she saw my work hanging in the same museum where Van Gogh's paintings lived. I pictured my father's quiet pride, Chase's reluctant respect, Lily's wide-eyed admiration. I presented the invitation at dinner, trying to keep my voice casual, though my heart was racing. My painting was selected for the Mia Young Artists exhibition. The opening reception is next Friday at 7. My mother glanced at the invitation, then checked the calendar hanging on the refrigerator. "Well, that's the night of Chase's championship game. We can't miss that. Maybe you could go with a friend?" Just like that, my moment was erased, not even considered worth rescheduling family. Plans for Chase's game, one of dozens he played each season, took automatic precedence over an opportunity that might come once in a lifetime. I went to the exhibition with Mrs. Abernathy instead. She took photos of me standing beside my painting, introduced me to real working artists who complimented my technique, treated the evening as the significant milestone it was. When one of my classmates asked where my family was, Mrs. Abernathy smoothly interjected, "Elena has quite the support system here tonight," sparing me the humiliation of admitting the truth. That night crystallized something I'd known but hadn't wanted to face. I would never be a priority in my own family. No achievement would ever be significant enough, no success impressive enough to shift the established dynamic. I was the middle child, the odd one out, the family misfit whose role was permanently fixed. So I made a decision that would shape the rest of my life. If I couldn't earn their love through achievement, I would find value elsewhere. I would build a life so rich, so authentic, so true to myself that their approval became irrelevant. Threw myself into developing my artistic voice, experimenting with different mediums and styles. I babysit and worked retail jobs to save money for art supplies and college applications. I began applying for scholarships, determined to fund my own education, since I knew my parents' financial support would come with strings I wasn't willing to accept. My senior year of high school brought the inevitable confrontation about college plans. I'd been accepted to several prestigious art schools, including my dream choice, the Pacific Northwest College of Art in Portland, which had offered me a substantial merit scholarship. "Art school," my mother's voice dripped with disdain. When I announced my decision at dinner, "That's not a real degree, Elena. What kind of job do you think you'll get with that?" Actually, there are lots of career paths for artists now. I began, launching into the research I'd done on employment rates for graduates with design and digital art skills. She cut me off with a wave of her hand. "This is just another example of your impracticality. Your brother is studying business administration. That's a degree with prospects. This art nonsense is just a hobby, not a career." "It's not nonsense," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "It's what I'm good at. It's what makes me happy." "Happy," she practically spat the word. "Life isn't about being happy, Elena. It's about security, stability, building something that lasts. Your father and I didn't work all these years to put you through some hippie art commune where you'll learn nothing useful." My father cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "Your mother has a point, Elena. We're concerned about your future." "If you're so concerned," I said, surprising myself with my steadiness, "maybe you could have shown some interest in my art before now. Maybe you could have come to even one of my exhibitions. Maybe you could have noticed that this isn't a whim. It's been my passion for years." A heavy silence fell over the table. My mother's face hardened into the expression I knew well, disappointment tinged with martyrdom. "Well," she said finally, "if you're determined to waste your education on finger painting, don't expect us to pay for it." I nodded slowly. I never did, and I meant it. I had applied for scholarships knowing this moment would come, prepared for the withdrawal of financial support that had always been conditional on my conformity.
Ow.
What I wasn't prepared for was the wave of liberation. That washed over me as I finally named the truth we'd all been dancing around. They had never supported my dreams. And now they never would. Leaving for Portland was both the hardest and easiest thing I'd ever done. Hard because, despite everything, these people were my family, the only one I'd ever known. Easy because for the first time, I was moving toward something rather than away. Toward a future I had chosen, toward people who might understand me, toward the possibility of belonging. The day I left, my mother was coldly efficient, helping me pack the car with practiced movements that betrayed no emotion. My father hugged me awkwardly, slipping an envelope into my hand when my mother wasn't looking. Just a little something. To help with expenses, he whispered, "What?" Inside was $500, not enough for tuition, but enough to say he cared, in the only way he knew how. Chase gave me a perfunctory nod, already focused on his phone. Only Lily, 12 years old, and still untainted by our family's dynamics, cried and clung to me, making me promise to call and visit. "I will, Lil," I assured her, hugging her tightly, wondering if she too would eventually learn to see me through our mother's critical lens. Portland was a revelation. The city itself seemed designed for someone like me, creative, a little offbeat, unafraid of rain or big emotions. The college campus buzzed with energy, with students whose appearance and interests would have scandalized. My mother's bridge club. For the first time, I wasn't the weird one. I was just one color in a vibrant spectrum of individuals expressing themselves authentically. My roommate Sophia was a photographer from San Francisco with purple hair, and a laugh that filled our tiny apartment. She took pictures of everything, beautiful things, ugly things, ordinary things, transformed by her unique perspective. "Why this?" I asked her once, as she photographed a rusted drain pipe against a crumbling wall. "Because nobody really looks at it," she answered simply. "And everything deserves to be seen at least once." Words resonated deeply, striking that tender place inside me that had gone unseen for so long. We became inseparable, Sophia and I, sharing not just an apartment but late-night conversations about art and purpose, about families that didn't understand, about finding our people in this rain-soaked city so far from where we'd started. The first year was financially brutal. The scholarship covered most of my tuition, but rent, supplies, food, these required a patchwork of part-time jobs that left me perpetually exhausted. I worked mornings at a coffee shop, evenings at the campus library, and weekends doing face painting at children's parties. I lived on ramen and the day-old pastries the coffee shop would otherwise throw away. But even in that exhaustion, I found a fierce pride. Every bill I paid myself, every meal I provided through my own efforts, was proof that I could survive without the conditional support that had been wielded as a weapon throughout my childhood. I was building self-reliance, one sleep-deprived, day at a time. My art evolved in this new environment, becoming bolder, more authentic, under the guidance of professors who pushed me to dig deeper. To express the emotions I'd been taught to suppress, I created work that was raw and honest. I specialized in digital illustration with elements of traditional media, a blend of technology and handcrafted authenticity that became my signature style. In my junior year, one of my professors recommended me for an internship at Prism Design, a boutique graphic design firm specializing in branding for small businesses. The position was unpaid, another financial strain, but the experience was invaluable. For the first time, I saw how my artistic skills could translate into commercial work that still maintained integrity and beauty. The creative director, Veronica Chen, became another crucial mentor. Sharp-eyed and demanding, she pushed me harder than any professor, sending me back to the drawing board again and again, until every element of a design served its purpose. "Good design isn't just pretty, Elena," she would say. "It communicates. It solves problems. It makes people feel something specific." Under her tutelage, I learned to channel my sensitivity into a professional strength, the ability to understand what clients needed, even when they couldn't articulate it themselves, to create visual languages that conveyed complex emotions with seeming simplicity. At the end of the internship, Veronica offered me a part-time position that I could maintain while finishing my degree. The salary was modest, but it meant I could drop one of my other jobs, giving me precious hours to sleep and create my own work. "You have something special," she told me during my performance review. "A unique voice. Don't lose that in the commercial work. The best designers maintain their artistic integrity even when they're designing a logo for a dentist's office." It was during this period of growth and discovery that I met Jack Sullivan. He was a software developer who had hired Prism to design the user interface for an app he was creating, a tool to help people with ADHD manage their daily tasks. Jack was brilliant, kind, and refreshingly direct. Unlike most clients he respected the design process, understanding that aesthetics were not just decorative but fundamental to how people would experience his product. We began dating after the project was complete, both of us conscious of maintaining professional boundaries. Until then, Jack was unlike anyone I'd dated before, thoughtful and deeply present. With none of the emotional unavailability, I typically gravitated toward a pattern I was beginning to recognize as a reflection of my relationship with my parents. He was the first person I fully opened up to about my family. We were lying on a blanket in Washington Park, watching clouds drift across the sky. When I finally shared the stories I'd kept carefully wrapped up, the forgotten birthdays, the dismissed achievements, the constant message that I was somehow fundamentally flawed, I waited for his reaction, for the uncomfortable shift that usually came when I revealed too much of my messy truth. Instead, he propped himself up on one elbow, looked directly into my eyes, and said, "They were wrong about you, Elena. Completely, categorically wrong." The simplicity of his statement broke something open inside me, not because he was the first to suggest my family's treatment was unfair. Therapists and close friends had said similar things, but because he stated it as an objective fact, not an opinion or a consolation. "How can you be so sure?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Because I see you," he said. "Not who you're trying to be or who someone told you to be. Just you, and you're extraordinary." Our relationship deepened over the next 2 years as we built a life that felt both exciting and secure. Jack encouraged my artistic pursuits without idealizing the struggles. He came to every exhibition, asked thoughtful questions about my work, celebrated my successes without making them about him. He was, I realized, showing me what unconditional support actually looked like in practice. We had just begun talking about moving in together when the accident happened. Jack was cycling home from his office. He always rode his bike, committed to reducing his carbon footprint, when a driver ran a red light. The impact killed him instantly. The police officer who came to my door said it was a mercy that he didn't suffer, didn't linger. As if that knowledge could somehow soften the sudden violent erasure of the future we had been building. The following weeks passed in a blur of grief so intense it had physical symptoms, nausea, constant pressure in my chest, as if my ribs were slowly collapsing inward. I moved through necessary tasks like a sleepwalker, identifying his body, meeting with his parents who flew in from Boston, helping to organize a memorial service that would honor who he had been. In my worst moment, curled on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., unable to breathe through the panic and sorrow, I called my mother. Some childish part of me still believed that in a crisis this profound maternal instinct would override our dysfunctional patterns, that she would put aside her criticisms and simply be my mother, offering the comfort I so desperately needed. I sobbed into the phone. "Jack's dead. There was an accident. He's gone." There was a pause, a soft intake of breath, and for a moment I thought perhaps I had broken through, reached the mother who might have existed in an alternate universe where I was valued and cherished. Then, "Oh, Elena, this is exactly why I worried about you moving so far away. Who's going to take care of you now? You'll have to come home. Not sympathy for my loss, not recognition of my pain, just confirmation that I had made the wrong choice, that my independence was a mistake, that I needed to return to their control." I hung up without responding, my grief now compounded by a final, shattering disappointment. Even in this perhaps the worst moment of my life, I was not seen. My pain was merely a vehicle for my mother to reinforce her narrative about my inadequacy. In that moment, something calcified inside me. A protective shell formed around the last vulnerable part of my heart that had continued to hope for my mother's love. I understood with perfect clarity that it would never come. That the relationship I had longed for existed only in my imagination. Sophia found me there on the bathroom floor. Came without hesitation when I texted her after hanging up on my mother. She held me while I cried, made me tea, stayed the night on my sofa, and the next night, and the next. She helped me navigate the bureaucratic nightmare that follows a sudden death, the death certificates and account closures, returning of keys and cancellation of subscriptions. All the small, cruel tasks that force you to repeatedly acknowledge the absence at the center of your life. It was Sophia who stood beside me at the memorial service, her hand steady on my back as I read the poem I had written for Jack. It was Sophia who packed up his apartment with me, carefully wrapping the model spacecraft he built in his spare time, sorting his clothes for donation, finding homes for his houseplants. It was Sophia who reminded me to eat, to shower, to continue breathing. My mother sent a generic sympathy card. My father called once, his discomfort palpable even through the phone. Chase sent a text that misspelled Jack's name. Lily now. 14 wrote me a heartfelt letter expressing genuine sorrow for my loss. The contrast between my chosen family and my biological one had never been starker. In Portland, I was surrounded by people who showed up, who did the hard work of supporting someone through grief without expectation or judgment. They brought food, they listened to the same stories repeatedly, they didn't rush me to get over it or move on. Gradually, with their help, I found my way back to something resembling life. Not the same life. Jack's absence was a wound that would always be part of me, but a life worth continuing. I threw myself into my work, both at Prism and in my personal art. I created a series of digital illustrations, exploring grief and resilience that garnered attention in the local art scene and led to my first solo exhibition. 3 years after Jack's death, I was offered a position as senior designer at Horizon Interactive, one of the top digital design firms in the Pacific Northwest. The salary was nearly double what I'd been making at Prism, enough to afford a bright, airy apartment of my own in a neighborhood I loved, to build savings for the first time in my life, to occasionally splurge on art supplies without calculating the meals I'd need to skip to afford them. I was succeeding by any objective measure, financially secure, creatively fulfilled, surrounded by genuine connections. Yet a part of me still carried the weight of my family's judgment. He still heard my mother's voice in moments of doubt, still felt the need to prove my worth through achievement. And then my father died, and everything changed again. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.